The alien hall was vast and glowing with blue light. Tall crystal pillars reached up to a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Alien warriors stood in a perfect circle, their armor shining under the strange glow. The air was thick with tension, and every alien eye was fixed on the center of the room. In the middle, on a black stone pedestal, lay the Vorthok mace. It was a weapon of legend among the alien race known as the Dravari. No outsider had ever been able to lift it for more than a few seconds. The mace was heavy, not just in weight, but in spirit. It tested the strength of the body and the will. Of the soul, those who failed were shamed forever. Karen, the commander of the Dravari Guard, stood tall with her silver armor glinting. Her 4 sharp eyes studied the human standing before her. She didn't see a warrior, she saw a fragile creature from a soft planet. This was going to be quick. She stepped forward, her long tail swaying, and spoke with a cold voice. "Human, the mace awaits you." Ethan Cross, a soldier from Earth, stepped forward without a word. His boots echoed on the polished floor. He looked up at the alien commander, his expression calm, almost bored. The alien crowd began to whisper. Some laughed quietly, certain this human would fail just like the others. Karen reached down and lifted the mace with ease. For her kind, it was nothing. She held it out to him. Her smile sharp and mocking. "Hold it if you dare," she said. Ethan took it without hesitation the moment his hands closed around the handle. The weight hit him like a mountain. It was so heavy his arms almost dropped instantly, but he gritted his teeth and tightened his grip. The crowd fell silent. They had expected him to drop it in a second. But he didn't. Ethan's muscles strained, his arms trembling. But he locked his elbows and held the mace upright. Kieran's mocking smile faded just a little. She stepped closer. "You can let go, human. There is no shame in surrender." Ethan met her gaze and said quietly, "Not my style." The mace seemed to grow heavier with every heartbeat. A strange energy began to seep from it, like a faint vibration in his bones. The blue runes carved into its surface flickered. Ethan could feel them, as if they were alive, watching him, testing him. His palms burned, but he kept holding on. The alien warriors exchanged confused looks. This was not how the test usually went. One alien leaned toward another and whispered, "Something is wrong. It should have rejected him already." The elder aliens at the back of the hall looked uneasy. They had seen this only once before. A very long time ago. Ethan's breathing grew heavier, but there was determination in his eyes. In his mind, he saw flashes of his family, his home, and every challenge he had faced on Earth. He thought of the times people told him humans were weak. That thought alone kept his grip. Tight Corin began to circle him like a predator. Her voice was soft but sharp. "Why do you fight a battle you cannot win?" Ethan's lips curved into a small grin. "Because I don't quit." His voice was steady, but his arms shook under the weight. The mace pulsed suddenly, a faint hum filling the air. The runes shone brighter, casting strange moving shadows across the hall. Some of the younger aliens took a step back. They could feel it too. The mace was waking up. Karen stopped walking, her eyes narrowing. She could see something in Ethan's posture. He wasn't just resisting. He was connecting with the weapon. That thought made her uneasy. The mace was not meant for humans. Yet, here, this human was, refusing to let go. The air in the hall grew colder. A hush fell over the crowd. All eyes were on Ethan as the weight seemed to press harder on his shoulders. His teeth clenched, sweat rolled down his forehead. But he didn't move, didn't even think about dropping it. Karen folded her arms and tilted her head. "This is going to be interesting," she murmured to herself. The test had only just begun, but already she could feel it. This human was not like the others. Ethan's arms burned like fire. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to let go. The mace was more than heavy. It was crushing. It felt as if the weight of an entire world was pressing down on his hands. The blue runes along its shaft glowed brighter with each passing second. They were alive, almost pulsing with a heartbeat. Of their own, his vision began to blur. Shapes in the crowd turned into shadows, and the cold alien hall seemed to stretch endlessly. But Ethan kept his feet planted, his grip unshaken. The whispers from the alien audience grew louder. Some were surprised, some annoyed. One warrior muttered, "He will break soon." No human can endure this. Corin stepped forward again, her armored boots clicking against the polished floor. She studied the human with an unreadable expression. Her voice carried both command and challenge. "You can still walk away, human. The trial will end if you drop it." Ethan shook his head slowly. Not going to happen. His breath was short, but his tone was sharp. It was not the voice of a man about to quit. The weight seemed to grow heavier every heartbeat. It pressed into his bones, pulling his shoulders down. His hands felt numb, his fingers locking in place. The energy from the mace sank into his skin, running up his arms like molten iron. It hurt, but in a strange way. It also made him feel alive, almost. Powerful, Corinne narrowed her eyes in her mind. She went over the history of the Vorthok mace. For centuries, it had tested warriors from across the galaxy. It rejected the weak instantly. Even strong warriors would crumble after a few minutes. But this human had gone far beyond that already. The Elder Council members began to shift uncomfortably. One of them whispered to another, "Do you see what I see? The mace is not fighting him. It is listening." The second elder's jaw tightened. Impossible. A human cannot bond with it. Ethan could hear faint sounds in his mind now. At first, he thought it was just his heartbeat. But no, it was something else. Whispers, strange and deep, like voices speaking in a language older than time. He didn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning. They were asking something of him, testing something in him. Memories flashed before his eyes. He saw the dirt roads of his childhood, the long days of training as a soldier. He saw the faces of people who told him he wasn't strong enough. Every insult, every doubt, every failure, it all burned away. In his chest, he was not going to be broken here. Not in front of them, not today. Corinne moved closer, her tail curling behind her like a question mark. She leaned in, speaking low enough for only him to hear. "What is driving you, human? No reward, no honor here will be worth the pain." Ethan's lips curved into a tired smile. "It's not about reward. It's about proving that humans don't quit." The alien commander studied him for a long moment. She had seen warriors fight for glory, for vengeance, for power, but never for something as simple and as dangerous as pride. The hall grew colder, the glow from the mace casting long, sharp shadows on the crystal pillars. The air vibrated faintly with each pulse of its runes. The aliens in the crowd could feel it too. The weapon was not rejecting him, it was measuring him. A deep voice from the back broke the silence. It was one of the elders, his words heavy with warning. "If he holds it much longer, the connection will be sealed." Corinne's eyes flicked toward the elders. A sealed connection meant the mace would choose the bearer for life. It was a bond that could not be broken without blood. Ethan shifted his stance. Steadying his legs, he took a deep breath, feeling the weight as part of himself now. The burning in his arms had turned into a steady, throbbing ache. He knew he could not hold it forever. But he didn't need forever. He only needed to outlast their doubt. Corinne's lips pressed into a thin line. This was no longer about watching a human fail. Something much bigger was happening here. She could sense it in the air. The trial was turning into something far older and far more dangerous than she had planned. The crowd's whispers fell into silence again. All eyes were locked on the human. The moment stretched, each second heavier than the last. Ethan's chest rose and fell slowly, his knuckles white. Still, he refused to let go. In that cold alien hall, surrounded by warriors who wanted him to fail, Ethan stood, not as a visitor, not as an outsider, but as a man holding the weight of a world in his hands, and he was not letting go. The runes on the mace were no longer faint. They glowed like molten rivers, flowing with light that seemed older than the hall itself. Shadows moved strangely across the walls, stretching and twisting as if alive. Ethan could feel the hum of power growing stronger deep in his bones. The whispers in his mind were clearer now. They were no longer just faint murmurs. They were layered voices, deep and echoing. The words still weren't in English, but somehow part of him understood. They were questions, tests, and warnings. It was as if the mace itself was speaking to him, not through sound, but through thought. One voice rumbled like thunder. "Will you break?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not today," he muttered under his breath. Another voice followed, sharper and colder. "Will you serve?" He didn't answer that one. He wasn't here to serve anyone. He was here to prove himself. Karen had been watching him closely. She could see the way his eyes flickered, not with fear, but with focus. She had seen warriors crumble under that look. But this human, he seemed to grow steadier the more the mace tested him. Something about it made her uneasy. The elder aliens shifted again. They knew the signs all too well. The glowing runes, the deep whispers, the shadows moving on their own. These were not random. One elder finally spoke aloud, his voice carrying across the hall. "Commander Corrin, this is no longer a test. This is an awakening." Ethan caught the word. It made something inside him click. The mace wasn't just heavy because of metal and stone, it was heavy with memory. It carried centuries of battles, of warriors who had tried and failed. And now, it was waking for him. The crowd began to lean forward. Even those who had been mocking him earlier were now silent. They could feel the strange shift in the air. Some of them looked nervous. Others looked almost afraid. Karen stepped closer, her voice low. "What is it saying to you?" Ethan blinked at her. "You wouldn't believe me," he said, his voice hoarse. "Try me," she replied, her tone sharp. Ethan hesitated, then said, "It's asking if I'm worthy." The commander froze for a moment. That was a question the mace had not asked in over 100 years. Usually, it simply crushed the unworthy without a word. For it to even ask meant that it was considering him. The voices in Ethan's mind were no longer just testing him. They were telling him things. He saw flashes in his head, visions of alien worlds covered in war. He saw massive armored warriors carrying the mace into battle. He felt their pain, their victories, their losses. And somewhere deep in those memories, he saw himself standing among them. His knees trembled under the weight, but he didn't falter. The runes grew brighter still, flooding the hall with light. Some of the aliens shielded their eyes. A deep vibration shook the floor like the heartbeat of a giant beast beneath them. The eldest alien present stepped forward, leaning on a black staff. His voice was heavy with warning. "If the bond completes, there is no undoing it, Commander Corrin." Kieran's jaw tightened. She had wanted the human to fail. Now, she wasn't. Sure, if she wanted him to succeed, but the choice was no longer hers. Ethan's breathing was slow, deliberate. He focused on one thought. Don't let go. The voices in his mind grew louder, swirling around him like a storm. Then one voice cut through the rest, deep and commanding. "You carry the will of the forgotten. Do you accept?" Ethan's grip tightened. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. This was more than a test, more than a show for an alien crowd. This was a challenge from something ancient, and he wasn't about to walk away. "Yes," he said quietly. The mace pulsed. Sending a wave of heat through his body, the glow spread from his hands to his arms, wrapping him in light. The air felt heavy and alive. The whispers fell silent, replaced by a deep, steady hum. Kirin took a step back, her expression unreadable. The elder council members exchanged grave looks. Something had just shifted in the balance of power in the hall. And the human was at the center of it. The trial was no longer about whether he could hold the mace. It was about what the mace would do with him now. The air in the alien hall had changed. It was heavier now, pressing on everyone's chest. Even the warriors in the crowd, strong and battle-trained, shifted uncomfortably under the strange weight. The glow from the mace painted the walls in moving patterns. It felt less like light and more like the presence of something alive. Ethan's legs were shaking. His arms burned as if fire had been poured into them. Sweat dripped from his brow, sliding down his face. He could hear his own heartbeat like thunder in his ears. But his grip on the mace never loosened. Kirin watched him closely. Every second he held on made the test less of a challenge and more of a legend in the making. She had seen strong alien warriors drop the mace after mere minutes. Yet here was a human, smaller, lighter, from a world with softer gravity, lasting far longer than anyone had thought possible. The whispers in Ethan's mind had returned. But they were different now. They weren't testing him anymore. They were preparing him. He could feel knowledge pressing at the edges of his thoughts. Images of alien battles, strange weapons, and warriors whose faces he had never seen. It was overwhelming. Like trying to drink the entire ocean in one breath, the Elder Council moved closer to the circle. One of them, his voice deep and slow, spoke to Kirin. This is the final stage. Before the bond completes, if he does not break now, the mace will accept him fully. Kirin did not reply. Her sharp eyes stayed locked on the human. Searching for the moment his will would snap, the weight grew worse. It was no longer just in his arms. It pressed down on his back. His chest, even his legs. It felt like the whole planet was trying to crush him. His breath came in ragged bursts, but still he stood. He thought of his father's words back on Earth, if you can still breathe, you can still fight. And he clung to that thought like a lifeline. Around him, the alien audience began to split. Some cheered for him now, shouting in their strange, guttural language. Others hissed in anger, furious that an outsider dared to match their sacred trial. The sound mixed into a roar of conflicting voices. But to Ethan, it was all just noise. The only thing that mattered was the weight in his hands. The mace pulsed again, harder this time. The runes flashed bright enough to momentarily blind the onlookers. The floor beneath Ethan's feet cracked slightly, as if reacting to the weapon's power. A low hum vibrated through the hall, shaking the crystal pillars. Kirin's lips pressed into a thin line. She could see he was close to collapse, but something in her chest twisted. Was she hoping he would succeed? She quickly shoved the thought aside. This was not about hope. It was about tradition. And tradition said no human should be able to do this. Ethan's vision wavered again. For a moment, he saw the alien hall fade into something else entirely. A battlefield under a red sky. Warriors in ancient armor clashing. The mace swinging through enemies like a storm. He could feel the strikes, the power, the unshakable will of the one who had carried it before him. The voices in his head spoke again, this time united. One more breath, prove you are the bearer. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. His arms felt like lead, but he gritted his teeth, lifted his head, and took one more deep breath. He felt the fire in his muscles turn into something else, not pain, but strength. A sudden silence fell over the hall. The cheering stopped, the hissing stopped. Even the hum of the mace quieted. Ethan realized they were all watching to see if this would be the moment, the breaking point, but he didn't break. Instead, he shifted his stance. Planting his feet like roots into the ground, his shoulders squared, his eyes locked on Corin S., and in that moment, without a single word, he told her, "I am not letting go." The elder who had spoken earlier lowered his head. "It is done," he said quietly. The mace glowed one final time, then settled. The crushing weight eased. Not much, but enough for Ethan to know it had accepted him. Corin took a slow step forward, her expression unreadable in her voice. There was no more mockery, only something colder, deeper, human. "You may have just changed everything." The hall was silent for only a moment. Then a deep voice from the Elder Council broke the stillness. "This trial cannot end here," the Elder declared. His voice carrying across the circle, several aliens nodded in agreement, their faces tight. With frustration, a single test is not enough to claim the title of bearer. Another elder added. Corin turned her head toward them, her tail flicking sharply. She knew what they meant. They wanted to push the human further. Much further. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, the mace still in his hands. His arms trembled from exhaustion, but the weapon no longer felt like a stranger to him. It felt heavy, yes, but also steady. He could sense it, as if the mace itself was waiting to see what would happen next. The eldest of the council stepped forward. His armor was black, his voice deep and commanding. "The path of blades," he said simply. Gasps rippled. Through the audience, even some of the hardened warriors looked uneasy. The path of blades was not a ceremonial test. It was a gauntlet meant for those seeking the highest honor in Dravari tradition. Many who entered never came back. Corin S. eyes narrowed. "You would risk killing him?" she asked. The elder's gaze was cold. "If he is as worthy as the mace believes, he will survive." Two massive alien guards stepped forward, pressing their clawed hands to the floor. The crystal tiles shifted with a deep, grinding sound. From the center of the hall, a bridge of pure blue energy began to rise. It stretched across a bottomless pit that had opened beneath them. The bridge shimmered, flickering as if it could vanish at any second. Rows of floating blades appeared along its length, spinning slowly at first. They were long, curved, and made of glowing plasma. Each one moved unpredictably, some swinging, some darting across the path like deadly snakes. The air above the pit shimmered with heat, and every breath carried the faint smell of burning metal. Ethan stared at it. For a moment, it looked like something out of a nightmare. But when he glanced back at Karen, she was watching him without a word. He tightened his grip on the mace and stepped toward the bridge. The crowd murmured, some in awe, others in anticipation of his fall. The moment his boot touched the bridge, it shifted slightly under his weight. He adjusted his stance. Holding the mace close to his chest, the first set of blades came swinging toward him from the left. He ducked just in time, feeling the heat of the plasma pass inches from his head. Every step was a fight. The bridge seemed to ripple and tilt under him. The spinning blades came faster, some low enough to slice his legs, others high enough to take his head. He had to time every movement perfectly. The mace slowed him down, but it also grounded him. Its weight made each step more deliberate. It was as if it was forcing him to move with purpose. Halfway across, the bridge began to pulse with energy. A sudden wave of heat rolled over him, and the air seemed to warp. His vision blurred for a second. When it cleared, he realized the blades were now moving faster, much faster. Some even changed direction mid-swing. He narrowly sidestepped one, feeling the rush of burning air against his cheek. The crowd was shouting now. Some called for him to turn back, others urged him forward, their voices blending into a wall of sound. Karen stood at the edge, watching with her arms crossed. Her eyes followed every movement. She was no longer thinking about whether he would fail. She was wondering what would happen if he succeeded. Ethan's breath came in short bursts. His muscles screamed with every twist and dodge. The mace's glow seemed to match the rhythm of his heartbeat. At times, he swore it was guiding him, pulling him just enough to avoid a blade he hadn't even seen. Finally, the last stretch of the bridge came into view. But standing at the end was a figure unlike any he had seen before. It was twice the height of the tallest warrior in the crowd. Its body was wrapped in heavy armor, and in each hand it held a massive energy axe. The guardian of the Path of Blades. It didn't speak. It simply stepped forward, blocking the exit. The crowd fell silent again. Ethan knew this wasn't just another obstacle. This was the final test of the path. He shifted his grip on the mace. Every muscle in his body ached, but he stepped forward anyway. If the Guardian wanted to stop him, it would have to try. The Guardian stood like a living wall of metal and power. Its black armor shimmered with faint blue light. The same light that pulsed from the bridge beneath Ethan's feet. The twin energy axes in its hands hummed with deadly force. Each blade was nearly as long as Ethan was tall. The air around it seemed to crackle, carrying the scent of burning ozone. Ethan tightened his grip on the mace. Every muscle in his arms ached. His legs were sore from dodging the spinning blades. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he didn't blink. This was the last obstacle. He could feel it. The whispers in his mind were silent now. The mace wasn't speaking. It was watching, waiting to see if he could win without its guidance. The Guardian moved first. One heavy step shook the bridge, then another. And then it swung an axe with terrifying speed. Ethan barely managed to raise the mace in time. The impact sent a shock through his arms, rattling his bones. The sound of metal meeting energy rang across the hall. The force of the blow almost knocked him off the bridge. He stumbled but kept his balance. The Guardian didn't pause. It swung the second axe in a low arc aimed at his legs. Ethan jumped back, the heat from the blade brushing against his boots. His heart pounded. One mistake here, and he wouldn't just lose, he'd fall into the endless pit below. He took a step forward, swinging the mace with both hands. The heavy weapon crashed against the Guardian's armor. The impact sent a burst of glowing sparks into the air. The Guardian staggered, but only slightly. It was like hitting a mountain. Karen watched from the far side of the bridge. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the fight. She could see that Ethan wasn't just swinging wildly. Every strike had purpose. He was testing the Guardian, looking for weak points. She found herself holding her breath without realizing it. The Guardian came at him again. Its strikes were relentless, each one faster than the last. Ethan blocked one, dodged the next. But the third hit him square in the chest. The blow sent him sliding backward, his boots scraping the glowing surface of the bridge. He coughed. The air knocked from his lungs. But he didn't fall. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself to stand straight. The mace felt heavier than ever. Still, he tightened his grip and pressed forward. With a sudden burst of strength, he swung upward, smashing the mace against the Guardian's right arm. The glow of its axe flickered for a moment. That was the opening he needed. He stepped in close before the Guardian could recover. With both hands, he brought the mace down in a crushing strike. Against its chest plate, the bridge shuddered from the force. The armor cracked. A thin line of blue light spilling out. The Guardian let out a deep, metallic roar. It swung wildly. But Ethan was already moving, circling to its side. The crowd roared in excitement. Some were cheering for the human now. Others were shouting in disbelief. Kieran's eyes were locked on the fight. Her earlier doubts had faded. Now she just wanted to see how it ended. The Guardian charged, trying to push him off the bridge. Ethan planted his feet. He met the charge head-on, slamming the mace into the Guardian's knee joint. The massive creature stumbled, dropping to one knee. Its axes swung clumsily as it tried to rise. Ethan didn't give it the chance. With a final shout, he lifted the mace high and brought it down with all the strength left in his body. The weapon struck the cracked chest plate again. This time, the armor shattered, blue energy bursting outward in a wave. The Guardian froze, then collapsed forward, its axes vanishing into nothing. Silence fell over the bridge. Ethan stood there, chest heaving, the mace glowing faintly in his hands. The fight was over. He had won. Kieran stepped forward slowly. The Elder Council followed, their expressions unreadable. One elder spoke in a low voice. "The path of blades has been completed." Another added, "The Guardian has fallen, the bearer has been chosen." Ethan didn't speak. He simply took one last deep breath and walked off the bridge. The mace felt lighter now, not because it had lost weight, but because it was no longer testing him. Ethan stepped off the glowing bridge. His boots touched the solid crystal floor of the hall. The weight of the mace was still there, but it no longer fought him. It rested in his hands as if it had always been his. The alien crowd, which had been so loud during the trial, was now silent. Hundreds of eyes watched his every move, some filled with awe, others with disbelief. Kieran stood waiting for him. Her silver armor caught the blue light of the hall. For the first time since they met, there was no mockery in her gaze. She studied him with the sharp eyes of a commander. Then she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "You have done what no human has ever done," she said, her voice steady. "You have passed the trials." The Elder Council stepped forward. The eldest carried a long staff carved from black stone. His voice was deep, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. "By the laws of our people, any who complete the trial of the mace and the path of blades shall be named Vortha born," he said. "From this day forward, you are one of us." Murmurs swept through the crowd. Some alien warriors bowed their heads in respect. Others turned away, unwilling to accept an outsider among their kind. But the law was clear. Tradition could not be broken, not even for a human. Kieran took the staff from the elder. She approached Ethan and stood before him. Her voice was formal now, carrying across the hall, "Ethan Cross of Earth. By the right of the trials and the will of the mace, you are granted the name and rank of Vorthik-born." She extended the staff toward him. He reached out and touched it with the mace still in his grip. The blue runes along the weapon flared brightly. A deep hum filled the air. It was the final seal of acceptance. The crowd erupted. Half of them roared in celebration. The other half shouted in anger. But their voices blended into something larger, the sound of history being made. Ethan let out a slow breath. He had won, not just the trial, but the respect of at least some of these warriors. He glanced at Kieran, who was still watching him closely. "You really didn't think I'd make it, did you?" he asked with a faint grin. Her mouth curved slightly, but not into a smile. "No," she admitted. "But I am glad to be wrong." The elder stepped back, giving space for the new Vorthik-born to stand before the people. Ethan raised the mace high. Its glow filled the hall, the light reflecting in the eyes of those who would tell this story for generations. The whispers in his mind returned for just a moment. Not as a test, but as a welcome. "You are one of us now," they said. Kieran raised her own weapon, striking the floor with the butt of her spear. The sound echoed like a drum. The warriors in the crowd followed, striking their weapons against the floor or their armor. It was the sound of acceptance. It was also the sound of a new chapter for both the Dravari and for humans. When the noise finally faded, the eldest elder spoke again. "This day will be remembered," he said. "The day the mace chose a human." Ethan lowered the weapon. Feeling the weight of those words, he had not come here to change history. But history had changed around him. He wasn't sure what would happen next, whether this meant friendship, rivalry, or something far more dangerous between Earth and the Dravari. But whatever came, he knew one thing. He was ready. Kieran stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. "There will be those who challenge you," she said. They will try to take what you have earned." Ethan gave a short nod. "Let them try," and with that, she turned and led him toward the great doors at the far end of the hall. The alien warriors parted to let them pass. Some glared, some bowed, but every single one of them knew the truth. The human who refused to let go had not only passed their trials, he had claimed his place among them. Beyond the doors, the alien city waited. Towering spires of crystal and steel stretched into the sky. The air was filled with the hum of ships passing overhead. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The mace was his now. The title was his now, and the galaxy was watching.